If you're offered a severance agreement after a termination or layoff, you should almost always counter with a higher number. The reason being, it's very unlikely that a company is going to pull an offer if you could negotiate. And that's because they want you to sign a severance agreement. It gives them assurance that you're not going to sue them in the future. So whether it's on your own or with an attorney, if you're offered a severance agreement, counter with a higher number. There's very low risk associated with it. My name is Jordan Harlow. I'm an employment attorney. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. It won't cost you anything.
Hello everyone, this is Emmanuel Cook. We will be reacting to a new video today, so make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's get into the video.
I was reviewing a severance agreement the other day and it had a clause in it that I can't believe employers are still including in their severance agreements. One of the most important clauses that appear in severance agreements that you need to heavily consider is the release of claims. When you sign a severance agreement and accept that severance payment, you agree to release the company from any claims related to your employment against them, which means in the future you can't sue them. Even if down the line you find out, hey, I had a really good discrimination case against them. One thing that you cannot release, though, is your right to payment. If you are not paid minimum wage, if you have unpaid overtime, or any other unpaid employment wages, those are not claims that you can release in your severance agreement. Just because it's included in the agreement doesn't mean it's enforceable. So when in doubt, have an attorney review your severance agreement and negotiate on your behalf.
Let's talk severance packages. So I work for a tech company, and not only was I recently let go as of 2 weeks ago, but I also was let go of the same company in 2020. I just want to say that there was no hate or negative feelings towards this company. There was a mass layoff, and I just happened to be one of the people who was laid off. That being said, I thought it would be fun to tell you guys what my severance package was. Just a disclaimer that I am allowed to do this. I signed my separation agreement and nothing in it said that I was not allowed to speak about my severance or anything like that. And I know I'm super lucky to get a severance package. I know it's not the same for everybody, so I just wanted to shed some light on what I'm receiving. So I got laid off 2 weeks ago. Part of the severance package is that they will continue to pay me until May 3rd through May 3rd. So 3 months of paid leave, and technically I'm on leave, and May 3rd will be my last day with the company. And so that's obviously really nice. I'm getting paid my same salary that I was before. When I was hired at my company with my new job in 2021, I was given some stock in the company, and that stock was to be vested over 4 years. And some of it has vested, but not all of it, and it will continue to vest through May 3rd, so my last day. The third part of my severance package is if I signed the severance agreement in a certain number of days, then I would get extra money. The whole point of separation agreements is basically just to protect the company, so I'm not allowed to sue them. Luckily, this company, there is no non-compete, so I can work for a company who does the same thing that they do, or their competitors, I guess is a better way of saying that. So I had 10 days to sign my separation agreement, and if I did it within that 10 days, then I get an extra 2 weeks pay for every year I've worked with them. 4 weeks minimum. And that's just a really convoluted way of saying that I basically get 2 extra paychecks. So all in all is I get paid 3 months, and then I get an extra month pay for signing this separation agreement. I also get to keep my health insurance through the end of May, and they are putting us in contact with resources that can help us find a job and help us get connected to jobs similar to ours now. And again, I know this is not the case for everybody, so I'm super grateful that my company is doing all of this.
The quick answer to this question is yes. If you have received a severance package and you get a new job before your final termination date with your current company, then yes, it can absolutely affect your severance package. So you definitely want to make sure that you read the fine print on your severance agreement, because if you do start a new role while you're still receiving severance pay, like say you're within your 60 days with the Warrant Act, then you could possibly receive a rude awakening where you may need to repay your severance package if you do start a job before your actual termination date. So with Meta, they did layoffs. Everyone is still under the 60-day Warrant Act, and your actual termination date isn't until sometime in May. So you want to make sure that you don't start a role prior to that final termination date, or it can affect your severance pay.
Update to my severance package, and it's actually not bad news. So first and foremost, I did consult with an attorney on wrongful termination. It was kind of not clear if I had a case or not, but given the time frame for me to respond to my severance agreement and the cost for that specific attorney, I didn't move forward. I wasn't comfortable. I didn't feel like I had a strong enough case. I also didn't have enough time to go and find a different attorney that worked on contingency. So I was kind of just stuck in the, I've got 1 month of severance and what do I do with this? So I figured, what do I have to lose besides getting a no to my question? So I stacked up all of the things about this situation and presented it to my HR rep at my previous employer. Those things included the fact that I had never had a verbal or a written warning about my performance, the fact that I had just had a really good review and a bonus 2 months prior, and didn't even have a full 2 months of work because there was holidays and time off in between that. And also justifiably, when I got hired on at that company, it took 3 months from the time of my application to the time of getting an offer letter. So surely, my argument was, you guys can understand that in this job market and this economy, that a month severance is not enough to cover those timeframes. So again, I figured, what do I have to lose? So I requested that consideration be made to give me 3 months of severance rather than 1 month of severance. They didn't give me 3, but they did give me an additional 2 weeks, which is better than nothing. So that buys me another half of a month to figure things out and to stretch money and all of that good stuff. Now, what I will say, and some of you guys may come for me for this, is I made sure before I signed that paperwork this morning on the 6 weeks of severance that my tax deductions were switched to exempt. I know the tax implications. I know I'm going to owe taxes on that money come April, but that is a problem for April 2025. That is not a problem for July, August, September 2024. Those are problems I will deal with later. Right now, I'm in survival mode, so I did what I had to do. That will put more money back in my pocket because my tax bracket was pretty high. They were taking around $1,500 in taxes per check. So that will bring me back about $3,000 for the month of August and $1,500 for the remainder of this month. Also, I did find out that my severance will get paid out like a regular paycheck. So it's going to be on the same cycle as what my paychecks were when I was working there, rather than a lump sum. So I actually prefer it that way. Some folks might want it all up front so they can just be done with it. But all of my finances and budgeting is based off of that current payroll cycle. So that gives me a little bit more time to figure things out. Anyhow, yes, that's my update to severance. It's not necessarily the outcome that I wanted, but it's a little bit better than what I was in. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you for all the prayers and the well wishes for that and for everything else. If you are curious about how I wrote that email out or the points that I made, send me a DM. I'll probably share this information in a document at some point that you all can just click on and get access to, because I'm getting a lot of questions, and I just want to help as much as I can at this point. So see you in the next video.
I have been trying and failing to negotiate my severance pay. I just got laid off 2 Thursdays ago. First of all, I reached out to 8 employment lawyers. Not one of them replied. Legit phone calls, filled out information, nothing. But I read that negotiation book, never split the difference. So I was like, I'm gonna use my knowledge. I started asking questions like, how is my severance calculated? Because it was just a random number. And from my calculations, it seems around 5 weeks pay, but not exactly. The HR team just fired back that information is confidential. Which is weird because every other severance I've ever seen, they've shown you how they calculate it. 1 month plus 1 week per year worked here, something like that. Why is it confidential? So then I read through the whole contract and everything. Apparently I signed a non-compete agreement when I first started working there as my employment agreement. Back then I didn't read contracts. I was really stupid. It's a year-long non-compete. So I tried to negotiate in the emails. I was like, if it's a year-long non-compete, then I would like a year-long severance package. I asked to keep the computer so I can apply for new jobs and for more company-sponsored Cobra. I didn't hear back for days, but then the VP messaged me back and he was like, everything is non-negotiable, sorry. You can find a job that complies with the non-compete with our outplacement services, which is basically resume writing and stuff like that. So even though he said it was non-negotiable, he didn't let me keep the laptop, so it seemed like a little bit negotiable. And so I messaged again. I was like, I've had so many friends laid off in tech, and I didn't say this in the email, but all of them got 6-month severance packages. And 2 of them who got that severance package had only worked there 1 year. I worked here 4 years, and in that whole 6 months, they couldn't get a new job because it's the worst job market on the planet right now. So I asked him, like, how am I supposed to survive on this severance package if it's taking longer than 6 months for a lot of tech employees to find new jobs who also got laid off? The VP didn't even answer my question. He wouldn't engage. He was just like, it's non-negotiable again. So I'm at the point, do I just give up? Do I just sign it? Because I do need the money, I'm not gonna lie.
A lot of times, these firms will have you sign a non-compete at the start when you get employed. It screws you over later. And so at the start, plan your exit. Plan how much money you will walk away with. Plan all of those things before you get the job, before accepting the role, or else you will come to regret your choice. Read the paperwork before you say yes to that job.
So the severance package that I received from the company that I worked for included 3 months pay and also included insurance from now until the end of the year, which I felt was a pretty decent thing for me. So another thing that was really great about the severance package that was provided was having a one-on-one mentorship with a company that would be helping me fix my LinkedIn and my resume in order to get me back into the field. Now, obviously, nobody wants to be laid off, but at the end of the day, many companies are laying people off and they're not offering severance packages, and you're basically on your own and have to file for unemployment. So the fact that I was given 3 months severance, I think that we can definitely utilize those 3 months to the best of our abilities. But if you think that the severance package is not that great, or just severance in general isn't that great, leave a comment below and tell me why, so that we can have a conversation, because this is also my first time receiving severance, so I'm not really sure if they have better options that I should have taken.
Did you know that severances are negotiable? Yes. Let's talk about the things that I did to negotiate an additional $20,000 in severance pay that wasn't even originally offered from my employer. Number 1 is finding a good employment attorney. So you should ask lawyers in your network or look through your local bar association. I worked with an attorney who was able to negotiate several clauses with my agreement and also fight for me to get additional severance pay based on my specific case. I would highly recommend that. I think oftentimes when we as employees try to negotiate directly with the employer, it doesn't land anywhere. Remember, when you get severance, you're essentially signing away your right to sue your former employer in the future. So some things to consider when you're thinking about negotiating severance beyond pay: lump sum versus getting monthly settlements, any additional clauses within your agreement that require confidentiality or non-compete are things that you want to try to get eliminated. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an attorney, that's just my personal experience, but let me know if you have any questions about this.
Yeah, the severance package for Meta was actually pretty good, pretty substantial. I mean, it's 4 months of severance, like 4 months of your base pay, basically, an additional 2 weeks for every year that you've been with the company, like 6 months of benefits. So the severance package is like the saving grace of this whole thing, to be honest. I mean, if there was a saving grace, I don't know, maybe saving grace is generous, but yeah, that's what the severance package looked like. Let me know if you have any other questions about that.
A quick reminder, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's continue the video.
I don't think enough people are talking on this app about how insane some of these severance packages are that these big name tech companies are giving employees when they're getting laid off. I'm talking Facebook, Google, Salesforce, etc. We're talking a minimum of 7 months, and in some cases, if you've been there for a long time, it can be over a year of pay. And if you're in certain states like California, you can collect unemployment on top of that. Unemployment for top earners is about $1,800 additional dollars a month. I think we can all agree that it sucks to be laid off, but if you were in that situation, you'd been with a company for a long time, and you find out one day that you received the severance package and it's the universe's way to nudge you into a different direction, I personally would not be upset. This is why it's so important not to wrap your ego around where you work.
If you ever find yourself laid off, do not sign the severance package without negotiating. I know this feels stressful. I've signed a severance without negotiating before in the past. Didn't even realize I had the ability to negotiate one. We're getting into April. We're second quarter for a lot of companies. If you've been on LinkedIn this week like I have, you'd see a lot of tech organizations have already done a round of layoffs this week. You're doing yourself a disservice if you're not going back and attempting to negotiate your severance package. The whole purpose of a severance package is to protect the company, protect your previous employer, and to make you walk away quietly and remove liability from them. They have an incentive to get that document signed. You having the nerve and the bravery and the courage to negotiate that severance oftentimes will result in you being able to get more money, longer benefits, or more added bonuses to it. Negotiate every single time.
So I wanted to rant real quick. About a month and a half ago, I was laid off, and thankfully, I'm so grateful for this. That company gave me a severance package. Well, they did tell me it was going to be paid out in 2 different payments. And after I got the second payment, I was like, well, there's a lot of money missing. Like, this isn't right. So I emailed them. Come to find out, $6,000 of that severance package went to taxes. $6,000. Like, I could really use that $6,000 instead of it going to taxes. I, for some reason, was under the impression that I'd be getting all that money. It wouldn't be taxable. That's not the case. But I would. That's a lot of money. Oh my god. Oh well, I guess.
I was recently laid off, you know what I'm saying? And, the whole layoff process kind of was crazy because they made me sign paperwork and basically gave me a severance package, you know what I'm saying? And told me that my position was being eliminated. I ain't believe it anyway, you know what I'm saying? But I just recently, just you know what I'm saying, going back in the area, visited a job, you know what I'm saying, stopping through, talking to old coworkers, things like that. And I found out that they are still hiring, but they not hiring under the original name. And they recently only hired Venezuelans. So I'm like, whoa, what's up with that?
Most people are going to take their severance package. They're going to relax. They're going to take it easy. They're going to deserve a break because they got laid off. They're mentally struggling, whatever the case is. Let's just say, for example, they have 3 months of severance package. They're going to take 2.5 months of just resting and relaxing before they start looking for a job. Then they're just going to run out of money. So what they should be doing is, and this is what we're doing. For this example, let's say we have 3 months. I'm going to take 1 month to 1.5 months to get a new job. Then I'm going to have a 1.5 month to 2 months of a bonus of income. So what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to take that money, invest that money. And in our scenario, we need a new car for our larger family. I'm going to invest that money and generate roughly $100 a month in cash flow from that investment of that severance package. And I'm going to allocate that $100 a month to the new car payment. That way, most people in this scenario would also take that $20,000 and they would just put it into a car payment or just go blow it. And they would have nothing to show for it. So in our case, what we're going to do is we're going to go buy an asset. We're going to use that asset to buy a liability, and it's going to put us in a better spot overall. What that severance package do, though?
If you've ever been impacted by a layoff, or maybe you're worried about one potentially happening at your company, it's really important to understand what goes into a severance package and what leverage you have if that happens. I hate to talk about layoffs, but I want you guys to be prepared. Now, the great thing is that I do this research, I share it on TikTok, so save this video to come back to if you need it. This year has been shit for a lot of tech companies, and to date, there have been over 150,000 people laid off from tech jobs. Obviously, I'm not in a position to predict where the market's going, but I do know the importance of being prepared, setting yourself up in a position where if you are impacted by a layoff, you know what power and leverage you have in that situation, and you can hit that job search strong. For this reason, it's really important to understand what goes into a severance package and how you can negotiate for one. For more executive and senior level roles, it's actually not uncommon to negotiate for severance when you're signing a job offer. For more junior entry level roles, it gets a little trickier. It's not necessarily always well received. That said, if your company has layoffs and they offer severance packages in exchange for you signing an NDA, this is the point that you can negotiate, and this is the point that you have leverage. A severance package is a company's way of protecting itself against the potential costs associated with litigation if you sue them. Any litigation costs are going to be way more expensive than the amount of your salary that they're covering for however many weeks are included in the severance package. So it's in their best interest to get you to sign that NDA and to come to an agreement that works for you. There are a ton of components besides just salary payments that go into a severance package. I'll list them out here. These are all things you can negotiate for. And make sure to leverage your success in your role in that negotiation. The most important thing that you need to do if you get laid off and you receive an NDA is wait. Don't sign anything yet. Just make sure you read it and fully understand it before you sign. These are legal documents. If you have access to an expert like a lawyer or a business mentor, have somebody read it over with you. Some NDAs or severance packages come with non-disclosure agreements or non-compete agreements, things that might prevent you from finding a new job down the road if you don't fully understand what they entail. Now, if you're financially able to do so, don't be afraid to walk away if the stipulations in the agreement is not something you're comfortable with. With luck, you'll be put in a position where you can comfortably search for a new job without sacrificing a paycheck.
Guys, always try to negotiate a better offer. Always. A lot of these times, these firms will lowball you by thousands of dollars. At times, it's like $3,000 to $5,000 less than you are actually supposed to get paid. At times, it can be even $10,000, even $20,000. Do not allow these firms that you worked at, that you gave a lot of value to over the years, do not allow them to give you what you do not deserve. They owe you money. So do not allow them to lowball you and to cut your change short. Make sure that you get all the money that is meant for you.
So a lot of people have been asking if I received a severance package and what that severance package was. I've held off on talking about this because I had not signed my severance agreement yet and I was trying to negotiate. Unfortunately, I was unable to negotiate successfully for the severance agreement, which is kind of a similar experience I had last time I was laid off. There were a few comments on my TikTok mentioning talking to a lawyer about my severance agreement, and heard from folks that sometimes they're able to negotiate a higher severance package, which is awesome, super cool. I decided not to go that route. I felt like the severance package was somewhat fair considering my tenure and my level at the company. So I received 10 weeks of pay starting yesterday. I received 10 weeks of COBRA, and then I received a couple months of career services through LHH, which is like, they're pretty much the standard for any company who's conducting layoffs. And then lastly, I was able to keep my computer. I cannot tell you how grateful I was that they allowed me to keep the computer. They wiped it back to factory settings, and now I have a fairly new Mac that I can use for my job search, which makes things a lot easier. I will say I was hoping for 12 weeks of severance, but given that I was a few weeks short of my 1 year mark at this company, I was only eligible for 10. So that being said, my goal is to have an offer in hand by early April. And ideal case, this severance would act as a little bit of a bonus if I'm able to find a job that is a good fit in time.
So here's the problem with Googling career advice. When you Google what's the average severance, what's a good severance package, Google results will pop up telling you 2 to 4 weeks or 1 to 2 weeks for every year you've spent at an organization. That's literally the only thing you'll find on there. And the problem with this is those pieces of content were not written by HR experts who understand HR law and how that applies to severance. These are just a bunch of people regurgitating the same content so that it is SEO optimized so that their client is found when you are Googling this kind of information. This information is not meant to educate and empower you. So what does the average severance look like? What does a good severance package look like? I'll share with you that from my experience, I've been working in tech since 2014. I've been working as a recruiter for the last 4 years. I've personally never seen anyone get less than 6 weeks, regardless of how long they've been at the organization. I would consider 6 weeks to be bare minimum. And most importantly, seek the law. You must self-educate on your city, state, and county regulations and how they apply to the companies that you work for. Knowing your rights is super, super empowering. I hope that helps. So by understanding what you are entitled to when it comes to severance legally, that's how you'll be able to know what a good severance package actually looks like.
If your employer offered you 16 weeks of severance in order to quit your job, would you do it? Because that's the move that Microsoft is making. They're giving employees they view as low performing two options. You can either go on a performance improvement plan, or you can accept the global voluntary separation agreement. But here's the catch. If you take that separation agreement, you get a 16-week severance package. So that's about 4 months of compensation, of benefits. It's a pretty good package in the grand scheme of things. If you don't and decide to risk your chances on the PIP and you don't successfully complete it, you get nothing. Apparently, a fairly large number of employees are going to be getting those letters now, but this is actually going to be available year-round so that managers can make this move if they feel that their employees aren't performing. This is coming after they've already fired 2,000 employees earlier this year that were deemed underperformers, and those people did not get any severance at all. And it's also worth noting that any employees who are exited under this program cannot be rehired at Microsoft for the next 2 years. They're also not eligible for any internal moves. One thing I'll note is that a lot of this is typical at a lot of companies. A lot of companies will give people the option of being put on a performance improvement plan or just accepting a severance package. Also, in most places that I've worked, if someone's not performing in one role, they're not really considered for other opportunities internally, and they're generally not going to be rehired. So Microsoft is just being more explicit than a lot of companies are. It sounds like at Microsoft, this program is going to target a lot of middle managers as well as people in non-coding roles. And other tech companies are going to be making these moves as well. I mean, the reality is that for years, tech companies were really bloated. They were hiring people who weren't necessarily doing that much. Sometimes they were even over-hiring just so that their competitors didn't have access to that talent. We're not living in that environment anymore. They don't have the budget to do that. And so we are going to see more and more of these cuts and more of a focus on productivity and impact.
So I was laid off a week ago, a week today. And I told those of you who are already following me that I was going to go through the unemployment journey and, kind of talk about it with you guys, just because in this day and age, layoffs are kind of common. I thought it might be helpful. I'm just here to give an update that the reason I haven't done that yet is because they still haven't sent me my severance package to sign. When I got the email immediately after the phone call letting me know that I was let go, they were like, you will have your severance package by Friday. We're gonna, fill it out. We're gonna have you sign it, make it all official. Great. So Friday afternoon came around. I was like, oh, they're West Coast. And then I realized that their HR office is in New York. So I was like, oh crap, it's 5:30 in New York. Let me just email them, see what happens. They didn't respond until yesterday, Monday. And they were like, oh, we're still working on it. For those of you who don't know, at least in the state of Georgia, when you're applying for unemployment, they say, did you get a severance package? And if you choose yes, you have to fill out, you have to upload the documents that say exactly how much you're getting, just, so they know, I guess, so that they're not giving you extra money because you're already getting money. But since I haven't gotten mine yet, I literally cannot apply for unemployment, because if I say no, then I'm lying and I get disqualified and I won't get unemployment. But if I say yes, I have to upload the form that I don't have. So again, emailed them yesterday. They said they're still working on it. So we'll see how much longer it takes. Does anyone know if it's legal for them to just delay this? How long they're allowed to delay it? According to what I found on Google, Georgia really doesn't have many laws against anything, honestly. They don't even have to give me my last paycheck until the official day that I normally would have been paid. So I have until Friday. I'm pretty sure that one's going to be fine, but they did claim they're going to pay out all my PTO in that paycheck. I don't even know how much that paycheck is. I'm salary, and they said they'll pay me for the hours I've already worked. How do you calculate that when we don't clock in and out? I don't know. So I don't know if I'm getting a full week's paycheck. I don't know if I'm getting 5 hours, 8 hours. I have no idea. But I will continue to keep you guys updated. And if you stuck around this long, thank you. If you want to follow with my journey, I also am going to be posting side hustles and all of that and how I can make money so that I don't, perish.
No, because unemployment especially in this current job market in Q4 of 2024, is crazy. Let's talk about the insurance benefit first of all. How am I supposed to live off of, essentially after taxes, about $400 a week? That's not even enough to pay my rent, guys. I went from every 2 weeks taking home over $3,000 to every 2 weeks taking home $800. Fortunately for me, I did get severance. I was initially offered 4 weeks. I asked for 8. They gave me 6. And they subsidized my COBRA insurance, thank God. That they initially were going to cover through December, but after negotiating, they covered through January for me. But still, I can't help but think like, wow, there's so many people who have been affected who don't even get any insurance subsidized at all. If my insurance wasn't subsidized, the cost to me to maintain the same benefits that I had with my company would be over $900 a month. When the severance hit my account, I was like, okay, I'm rich, I'm good. But hi, when you don't have an income, that money vanishes right before your eyes like that. I'm probably okay until January, and then I'm up a creek, and I can't help but think like there are people with whole families who didn't have as much saved up or didn't get as generous of severance. Like literally, how do they exist? I'm struggling after 1 month of unemployment, and I just can't help but think how shitty that is for people that I know have been unemployed for like a year in some cases, especially in this market, which takes me to not just the benefits themselves, how little it is, but let's talk about the freaking job market real quick. I have personally applied to easily over 50 jobs since the end of October, and I have not even gotten one single call from a recruiter. I've either been just ghosted or I'm still getting like rejection emails left and right before ever talking to a human. That's crazy. Every time that I even go to apply to a job on LinkedIn that I'm not even excited about. There was an era where I was only applying to jobs that I was like really excited about and I had options. LOL. I'm not even excited about these jobs. I go to apply, it says on LinkedIn over 100 applicants, and it doesn't tell you more than that, so it could literally be like thousands. What's more is that I'm in HR. Everyone needs HR. Every industry, every company needs HR people, right? Then I think about these people who are in like hyper niche roles. Like I used to work in video game development. If you're like a game designer and your company has layoffs and the whole gaming industry is affected by things like this, what are you supposed to do? Here's the other thing. I have like a pretty cool resume. I'm not trying to brag about anything. I'm just saying that like compared to other HR candidates, I've worked for really big companies. I have over 8 years of experience. My point was like, I'm struggling that much and I have like big names on my resume, and there are so many people out there that don't have as much experience or don't have big names on their resume. And if it's that hard for me, like it's got to be really hard for them, you know? I feel like I'm not saying this correct. That's basically my rant. As I woke up to a couple more rejection emails. My hope is that January is kind of the turning point, and I need it to be, because after January, I guess I'm gonna have to move back in with my parents. But yeah, I'm hoping January it turns around, because we are in Q4. That's when businesses are running out of money. January, they typically get new budgets, more money for the new year. And hopefully it picks up then, but it's overall not a great market right now. And it's just not looking great for me. Pray for me.
I mean, at this point, just do what you can. Do what you have to do. If you have to move back in with your people, do that. If you can stay with friends or roommates, fantastic. You know, if not, I mean, it is what it is.
I appreciate you guys watching the video today. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.